Welcome to the Chai Center and welcome to the Chai Academy, being broadcasted live from the Chai Center. The Chai Academy is a plethora of talks, classes, courses made by yours truly over the course of the past, 14 months, 15 months, not exactly sure. Some classes are just on a specific topic, others is a series, but each class is self-contained. I would ask you, I would tell you that if you would like to see the other recorded classes, you may go to the chaicenter.com/academy, and you'll see many classes. You'll also be able to catch up on this Holocaust series. Not that you have to. I would ask you to, if you could please spread the word. I do this to teach, and I think since Passover, so it is out of the the numbers are significantly down, and so it's sort of a rebuilding. So you can help me with this by sharing our daily courses. Yesterday we spoke about the Warsaw Ghetto uprising that took place, and that was one of the highlights of the Holocaust, even though once again no hope of survival, no hope of winning, but it was still hopeful. So now we're coming to the end of the war, and we have a couple more things to discuss. Today we're going to talk about the Nuremberg trials. We're going to talk about German reparations at some point. So the Nuremberg trials basically took place in 1946. It took a little while for the dust to settle after the war, and to the war ended, I don't know, in May 1945. So this was about a year later. They started to convene the Nuremberg trials. So and essentially the Nuremberg trials was not all of Nazi Germany, but rather there were 21 Nazi leaders who they were tried for their criminal, heinous crimes against humanity, heinous acts against humanity. And there would have been 22, but of course Hitler killed himself on April 30th, 1945, and so therefore he was not tried. So the 21, and the 21 were all basically instrumental in the final solution, in devising plans. So it was the ones that helped this anti-Jewish rhetoric that led to death. The judges were from the United States, the United Kingdom. There was from the former Soviet Union, France, and they sat there and they listened. Now most of this trial, most of the Nuremberg trials, focused on the concentration camps. So the treatment of Jews in the concentration camp, and gypsies and homosexuals, but mainly Jews, and the systemic killing, murder of Jews. That became the focus. Now, these Nazis, right? Most of them, and it's the famous defense that you hear, most of them defended their actions by saying we were just following orders. We were soldiers, and we were told what to do. And as a soldier, you're given an order by the higher ups, your general, your captain major. You listen. So that was their defense. The defense was just following orders. Now, it's interesting. The following order defense is we just recently had the verdict of the Derek Chauvin trial. guilty on all three counts. But there were other police officers there. I think 3 or 4 other officers. Now they are going to they're going to be tried, and the question is what's their defense? Now we know one of them asked Derek Chauvin, should we put him on his side? He was complaining that he couldn't breathe. This terrible story. Should we put him on his side? And Chauvin said no, and he let it go. So should he have let it go? Was he, Chauvin was the veteran cop. This guy was a rookie. So following orders comes, it comes up. So some of them, that was their defense. We were just following orders. Others defended themselves to saying, hold on, we didn't know about these atrocities. We knew about labor camps, we knew about segregation, we know about the anti-Semitism, but we had no idea of the killing fields. We had no idea this is what was going on. So we were ignorant. Now there was a couple of Nazis did own up. Right? One Nazi in particular was on trial. His name was Hans Frank. He was the Nazi commandant of Poland. So he basically was the ruler of Poland during the war, since I guess Nazi occupied Poland September 1st, right, 1939. So basically he expressed remorse, and he said something to this effect, that it will take 1,000 years. Take 1,000 years for the sins of Germany to be fully fleshed out, something like that. Now, I claim that he's just, he's a liar. And the reason why I say this is because this fellow Hans Frank was responsible for the deportation and the ultimate murder of 3.5 million Jews in Poland. The Jews took the biggest hit in Poland. And this guy was responsible. Right? He was responsible for the deportation, for the murder. Right? I wonder really, he may have, was this a true remorse, or was he just sorry that he got caught type of thing? He was a bad egg. He was a very, very bad person. 3.5 million. And just, by the way, he gave a very, very famous speech in 1941, and he says, all I ask of the Jews is that they disappear, cease to exist. And if you meet a Jew, destroy them, get rid of them. So this is the guy's speeches in 1941, and all of a sudden during the Nuremberg trials, this Hans Frank, commandant of Poland, all of a sudden says, oh, it's a blight, it's a stain on Germany. He is the blight and stain of Germany. Hans Frank was really out of the 21 Nazis tried, he was probably, to me, 3 in line from Hitler. He was, so you had, maybe 4 in line. You had Himmler, and you had Streicher, but he was up there, really up there. He wasn't number 21, so he can have remorse all he wants. By the way, after the war, he converted to Catholicism, and he became all religious, etc. And actually, when he was walked to hanging, they say that he was smiling because he felt now he can get penance. I don't know. You know what? There's no penance. There's no penance. So he can stop. He can stop smiling. Who was he? He was actually Hitler's personal lawyer. Before Hitler became the known entity, he was Hitler's personal lawyer, and he was there at the putsch at the beginning, and we spoke about it, the attempted revolt in the pub in Munich. He was there. He was one of the, because he knew Hitler before Hitler became a politician. He was Hitler's personal attorney, as I said, and he was actually the one that was responsible for the rumor that Hitler's mother had Hitler's mother was impregnated by a Jew, right? He was the one. Now, the story goes something to this effect, that he had in his possession Hitler's personal diaries. In Hitler's personal diaries, it records there that Hitler was being extorted, and that they once, Hitler became this person who hated Jews, to say that Hitler had a little secret. The secret allegedly was Hitler's mother had an affair with somebody in a Jewish household, who Hitler's mother or Hitler's mother's mother was working there, something to that effect. So you always hear that Hitler had an issue because Hitler had Jewish blood. It's still unclear to this day what the truth was, but Hitler was being, he was being extorted by somebody over a secret. So there's something there, and this fellow had the diaries, which actually he gave to the Allies. He handed them over. Before he was caught, or maybe once before and once after, this fellow is such a loser. He tried to commit suicide twice, and he was unsuccessful. And eventually he was hung, and he was hung, and he was executed by the judges, by their decision in the Nuremberg trials. Not everybody was executed. Not everybody was hung, sentenced to death. He was. Another fellow of the Nuremberg trials who was sentenced to death, his name was Julius Streicher. Julius Streicher was the editor-in-chief of the Stürmer. The Stürmer really was, when you see all these pictures of Jews with long noses and dirt and anything you hear, he was just as tough on the Jews as Hitler was, and it was this man that basically portrayed the Jews in the light that they were portrayed in. He was responsible. He was just as vile, this man, right? Just as vile. And by the way, what was his excuse? Here's an interesting one. He said that why should he be punished? Right? He was just echoing the words of Martin Luther. Martin Luther from 400 years ago. Martin Luther was a philosopher. Martin Luther was a priest. Martin Luther was the one that broke away from Catholicism and challenged Catholicism. The indulgence clause. Martin Luther had many what was considered, many issues, heretical issues at that time with the Catholic Church. He did not like how St. Peter's, the basilica was being paid for by poor people's money when the church had more money than God. So he was, and Martin Luther was excommunicated. Martin Luther was non-excommunicated. Martin Luther was vile anti-Semite. Martin Luther, the things he wrote about Jews, he said that they killed Jesus and they deserve to die. God's wrath should be on the Jews. And then he started to say maybe we can bring them into Christianity, and when the Jews rejected that, he said they need to be eradicated. So and they are just vile creatures, and they are no longer the chosen people. God took away that right. So this is Martin Luther, right? I can't even believe people still visit him at his grave. To me, I'll visit him at his grave if given the opportunity to spit. But people still visit, and this is where he lived, in the Wehrmacht castle, and it's a tourist site where Martin Luther was a piece of garbage. Anyway, so he blamed it. He blamed it on Martin Luther, and a lot of things that happened in Nazi Germany, the Yellow Star, Martin Luther, right? That they are a hated people, Martin Luther, etc. He was executed, thankfully, and it's interesting. On the way to the gallows, the last words actually that came out of his lips was Purim Fest. He was referring to the Jewish holiday of Purim, where the wicked Haman and his 10 sons were hung on the gallows because of they were punished for their vile anti-Semitism. And that's what he said, Purim Fest. Like, this is Purim Fest, and this is 1946 Purim Fest type of thing. At the end of the day, there were 11 Nazis of the 21 sentenced to death. Others got, who basically were part of the war machine, but not directly killing Jews. The ones that who had the factories to build the grenades and the bullets, etc. I forget his name right now, Schreier or something like that. Anyway, he was sentenced to 20 years. So there were 11 sentenced to death. One of them, Hermann Göring, nasty piece of garbage. He had, and how he got it is a mystery, but he swallowed a cyanide pill on the morning of the execution, and he died via suicide. So they never got a chance to execute him because he took the coward's way out. They're all cowards. Anyway, so 10, ultimately 10, which is so ironic because the 10 sons of Haman were killed, were hung on the gallows. 10 sons, the 10 Nazis were killed, hung on the gallows. There were critics of the Nuremberg trials. And one of the greatest critics of the Nuremberg trials, who to me, I mean, I say it as it is. He was a disgrace to the Taft family, right? He was the son of the President of the United States. He was the son of Justice, Supreme Justice of the United States. He was a senator of Ohio, Senator Robert Taft, and he used the argument. He used a couple of arguments why he was opposed to the Nuremberg trials. One of these, he said, it was post facto. You're giving them a trial post facto. While they were committing these atrocities, that was the law of the land. It was legal. So they weren't criminals, which is so warped and so out of whack, right? The law of the land was they can kill Jews. Therefore, you exterminate Jews. Therefore, you kill Jews and torture Jews and kill 6 million Jews. But that was his argument, that it was post facto. While they were doing it, it was perfectly legal. So, this man was not honorable, Taft. His other argument was, hold on, who's trying them? It was the enemy, right? If the United States was involved in the war, England, Russia, France, Germany, right? No, maybe we should have somebody from Thailand try them, a neutral party. So he was therefore he was criticized, and there was he became actually vice president. The name escapes me right now. He blasted Taft. He blasted him, and he said something that resonates now. Actually, it resonates true now as it did then. He said that you for the millions of people that got killed during the war, for the millions, for the thousands, tens of thousands of orphans, widows, right, who got killed during the war, you didn't say a peep. But all of a sudden, when it comes to these criminals, all of a sudden your heart bleeds. He says that's a moral rot, and he's right. And we see it now. We see it now. All these celebrities raised money, and this is a political statement. That I'm not getting into politics, but it is a political statement. Celebrities raise money for those that looted during the riots this past summer, in the summer of 2020. They raised millions of dollars because these looters who were caught were going on trial. But not one penny went to the poor businessmen whose business was destroyed by these looters, who had nothing to do other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time, that they happened to own a bodega in Manhattan. Right? It's you can have a bleeding heart, but at least be consistent. You can care and have compassion, at least be consistent. Taft wasn't consistent because there was not one peep about the widows and orphans, not one peep about people who died during the war, but there was a peep. He did mention the criminals, Nazis, high Nazis. They weren't trying. Nuremberg wasn't the average guy. Nuremberg was an expose of what happened and who orchestrated it. So it's the same idea, in my opinion, that if you're going to pick and choose, then it's moral rot. What's troubling, but I don't hold it against him, and JFK wrote a book called Profiles of Courage, and he took 100 people, I forget how many people, I read the book. It didn't bother me back then, but it bothers me now. I read the book. He says about different political figures who basically didn't stand up to their political, who stood up to their political party and had a difference of opinion, and they had courage to convey. So they instead of voting in line with their party, they took a different stand. So they had 50 senators, voted one way, and one senator of the Republican or Democrat voted the other way. So JFK, he highlighted them. So he highlighted this Taft because he was able to stand up to his party, the Republican Party, which was very conservative back then, very conservative, and he stood up to this party, and he said, no, the Nuremberg trials are bad. So JFK, pointed out that how courageous that was. Yeah, it probably was in his day, but and I don't blame JFK. I do blame Taft. I think he selected where he was going to feel badly. Nuremberg trials were televised over the entire world, and everybody had everybody had an insight as to what the Nazis did. And to me, the Nuremberg trials really set the world back on its axis, because there was nobody talking for the Jew, except for a few partisans. But this, because the president Roosevelt could care less, and there was nobody talking for the Jew. France could care less. Poland could care less. Finally, the Nuremberg trials set it back on its axis and kind of exposed what happened. And to me, that was a righteous event. Please share to gain viewership, and people can subscribe in our YouTube channel. You can subscribe so you'll be let known how the next class that's coming up. YouTube, the Chai Academy, you'll see it there. And if you have any questions, you may ask here, or you may email me directly, rabbi@thechaicenter.com. And I think the lesson today is you have to be consistent, right? Like I know somebody who was so angry at the riots in Washington on January 6th, as I was, so angry. How dare they? The Oath Keepers and other, right? How dare they? But they weren't angry at the looters. Oh, no, we got to protest. I'm not talking about the protesters. I'm talking about looters. They weren't angry. The lesson I think we learn from here is that you have to be consistent. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. You can't dance on both parties at the same time in the same night. God bless. Upwards and onwards.